Let me tell you guys a little secret. Everyone is deserving of love. Even you. Even you. The Heart of Thomas explores one's journey in accepting that they are loved and understanding that they too deserve love despite the misfortune that falls upon them. The Heart of Thomas starts off in Thomas's perspective as he ends his own life. A poem of sorts lays out his thoughts and motivations. To Thomas, his death was a sacrifice for the one that he loved. The one who must love him but was effectively dead. Thomas believed that dying would somehow bring his loved one back to life, in a sense. But he'd never truly be dead because his loved one would always remember him. Thomas's death is painted as a final act of devotion, an act of love. Love in the Heart of Thomas is devoid of sexuality and painted as a purely emotional or spiritual thing. The way characters show love is through a desire to protect, pure admiration, and a desire for full understanding. It's a sweet thing that the main character, Julie, has cut himself off from. Julie is very emotionally closed off, calling Thomas's love for him a farce. The idea of Thomas loving him is absurd to him. It's nothing more than playing in his eyes. But once Julie reads Thomas's final letter and realizes it's a suicide note, he is forced to reconsider everything. Haunted by the weight of knowing what actually happened to Thomas, Julie is sent spiraling. He's noticeably unwell to his teachers, having nightmares and fits, and ruminating on the letter and what it could possibly mean, and how it recontextualizes what he thought he knew about himself and Thomas. Julie's close friend and roommate, Oscar, shows a great deal of care towards him. Oscar takes on a protector role, trying to pull Julie out of his crisis, even going as far as kissing him to calm him down from a nightmare. It's established pretty quick that Julie, despite how he feels about himself, is actually loved and adored by his classmates, but that love falls on ears not ready to hear it. Julie is pretty hung up on the fact that Thomas killed himself for him, and to be fair, yeah, I would be hung up on that as well. I would feel awful if I were in Julie's shoes. Julie feels anger and guilt, mostly, and he remains haunted by Thomas until he makes up his mind to move on. He's ready to put it all behind him and just keep trucking forward the way he always has. He's decided to pack this all away and to not think about it anymore. But Thomas's ghost comes back in the form of a boy who looks just like him. Furthering the deja vu, Eric guesses Julie's name right off the bat, further selling the illusion that this boy could be Thomas, or someone related to him. But when Julie asks, Eric doesn't know Thomas at all. Totally unrelated. Julie lets it slip that Thomas killed himself, which is not the official story of his death. Julie only knows that it was suicide because of the letter that Thomas left him. Everyone else was told that it was an accident. Shortly after being introduced to the story, Eric becomes the primary character that we experience this world through. Taking a break from Julie's struggle with accepting love, we focus more on the conflict of identity that Eric struggles with. He wants to be seen for who he is, not whoever Thomas had been. And he also struggles with how his relationship with his mom has changed. This is where the Heart of Thomas shares the most similarities with the November Gymnasium, which was the first version of this story to be published. Eric is a character that doesn't really struggle to feel love, but he feels most of his love towards his mother. And now that she has a new boyfriend and has sent him off to boarding school, he feels betrayed. He has this very codependent relationship with his mom, and it is beyond how a child should depend on their mother. He has this childish notion that he's to grow up and be the sole man in his mother's life, that their bond is the only bond either of them need. As Eric makes it to school, he notices the other boys gawking at him, and catches the name Thomas again. Looks like another main character of this series will be haunted by Thomas. Oscar runs into him and tells him as much, trying to explain why people are staring at him. But Eric already got the down low from Julie and finishes the warning from Oscar for him. Except, Eric shouldn't know that Thomas killed himself. He died in an accident. That is the official story. That's what Eric should have heard. Who put that ridiculous story in Eric's head? Oscar tries to keep the story covered, calling Julie a little strange, trying to dismiss his credibility to this new kid. Oscar then tries to make Eric feel better, explaining that sometimes people just look alike. He looks like his dead mother. Oscar takes on a protector role in this narrative, but that's not just for Julie. He takes Eric in under his wing, trying to help him navigate while also protecting Julie's feelings. It wouldn't be good for Julie if people knew what really happened to Thomas, and Eric's presence will likely cause Julie to maybe have a spiral or a mental breakdown. Oscar has a lot of love and care for Julie that kind of paints how he interacts with the world, the people he chooses to protect, and how he chooses to protect them. Being a friendly mentor figure to Eric, while it probably is something Oscar would have done regardless, he just seems like a chill guy. Part of his motivation to do so is because it became pretty apparent pretty quick that maybe Eric has already met Julie, and Oscar needs to try to keep the situation from getting worse. But since this story is of overcoming ghosts and learning what it means to love, Eric and Julie are going to cross paths quite often. Seeing Eric, Julie takes all his anger and confusion and hurt towards Thomas's affection and death and misplaces it all on this new kid. He drops his perfect student mask and vows to kill Eric. Julie doesn't truly see Eric as his own person, instead an echo of Thomas that needs to be dealt with and disposed of. Because acknowledging it and trying to reconcile with it means that Julie needs to confront his own feelings, needs to confront what really happened, and needs to accept that maybe somebody did love him. But that kind of vulnerability is embarrassing and difficult to do, so Julie's not gonna do that. Not yet, at least. Eric and Julie have this antagonistic back and forth as Julie sees Thomas staring back at him, not Eric as own individual person. And Eric begins to accidentally get closer to Julie and learn more about him. And I really mean it when I say accidentally, because Eric hates Julie, likens him to his stepfather, and does not want anything to do with this man. But at the same time, Julie is a fascinating mystery. So, it's kind of easy to get sucked into what is going on with this guy. Eventually, the two become roommates, Oscar being separated from Julie due to fear of him being a bad influence, stemming from rumors of the two being seen kissing one night, spread by Ante? I don't know if it's Ante or Ante, spread by this guy to separate Julie and Oscar so that Oscar would be free to love him back, because everyone in this school is motivated by their feelings of love, for better or worse. Ante also feels responsible for how things went down between Thomas and Julie, since he's the one that encouraged Thomas to pursue Julie. It was all to get Julie and Oscar to leave each other's side, and this does not work out for the poor kid. Ante plays himself because everything Oscar does is out of love for Julie. This was his closest friend. That's the boy who needs to be protected. The boy he loves. We learn pretty early on, or at least it's alluded to pretty early on, that Julie had been hurt. Assaulted by someone who left a cigarette burn on his chest, the placement symbolizing Julie's damaged heart, figuratively. Oscar became Julie's roommate around the time of the incident and feels like it's his personal duty to protect Julie and help him recover. Oscar knew all about what happened despite Julie never telling him, so Julie doesn't know that Oscar knows and cares about him anyway. I don't know if that would have changed things between them because Julie does not think he is worthy of being cared about because of this incident. As Eric and Julie continue to antagonize one another, Eric learns of this burn mark, accidentally exposing Julie in front of their classmates. At this moment in the story, we don't know what happened to Julie, but being exposed is incredibly upsetting to him. He lies about it, trying to protect the version of him he wants people to see. Their classmates start to speculate that a mark was a hickey left by Oscar. Oscar begs Julie to show them that it's obviously a burn mark, but Julie is stunned that Oscar even knows what it really is. He retreats, beginning to spiral. Julie has a breakdown once in private. He considers taking scissors and carving the scar out of him. The issue he's having isn't necessarily the scar itself, but what it symbolizes and what it reminds him of. a physical remnant of being abused. It's never directly stated, but it is heavily implied that Julie was sexually assaulted, and having this burn mark as a visual indicator of how his body was taken advantage of and ruined in his eyes. So it makes sense that he would rather have a gaping hole or a more serious wound instead of the burn mark, removing what others had done to him with an act he is choosing to do himself. Not saying that that's a healthy thing to do, but I understand his thought process. Eric returns to their room asking about the scar, but Julie is still in a really bad headspace, and he takes the scissors that he was going to carve himself with and rushes Eric instead, holding him down by the throat, ready to plunge the scissors into him. Eric cries out to God, causing Julie to pause and ask if Eric believes in God. Does Eric believe that God will save him no matter what? He pushes until Eric confirms that he does believe in God. Julie continues to question him, asking if Eric believed that Julie would loosen his grip, and pointing that Eric could have killed Julie in self-defense just now. They'd literally just proved in their fencing match that Eric's reflexes are faster. But Eric doesn't want to kill anyone. Julie tells Eric he just so happened to change his mind this time. But Eric continues. He would never wish death on someone else. Maybe himself, but never another. If Julie really wants to kill him, then he can go ahead. He won't resist. Julie points out that this is what Jesus said to Judas, and he breaks down, clinging to Eric for a moment before telling him to leave. Julie slumps down to the bed, head buried in his arms. This is a turning point in Julie and Eric's relationship. Seeing himself in Judas, the betrayer of Jesus, of Eric, of Thomas, Julie blames himself for Thomas's death. Thomas died for him. Thomas died because of him. So he killed Thomas. This line of thought is why I think he's threatened Eric, even attacked him. If he killed Thomas, he can do it again. But I don't think Julie actually has it in him. He's a good person at heart, not a killer, despite the responsibility he has placed on himself. Just like Judas, Julie betrayed those that claimed to love him. The Heart of Thomas uses a lot of religious imagery and themes to kind of tell this story about a character overcoming trauma. Julie likens himself to an angel that has lost his wings, and sees his abuse as something that ruins him. The abuse is what tore his wings away in the first place. He pretends to be okay, to be good. Julie sees his victimhood as a personal failing. He doesn't consider himself a person who had something bad happen to him, but a person who has been tainted, and is a liar unworthy of love because of what he hides. These feelings get tangled up in his conflicting thoughts for Thomas, making it harder for Julie to accept Thomas's affection, and harder for him to move on from the fact that someone seemingly loved him enough to sacrifice themselves. Julie's personal struggles also do tie into his relationship with religion in a more literal sense. He's a character that puts on the facade of being a good little Christian boy, reading passages from the Bible at Mass, going through all the motions that he should, but under the surface, his very belief in the thing he ties himself to is shaken due to what happened to him. Part of Julie's hangup is the shame of being abused, sure, and how that intercepts with ideas of purity in a religious context. But outside of that kind of context, Julie was essentially tortured into calling his abuser a god, committing blasphemy against the Christian God he claimed to be devoted to. We don't learn all of this until kind of the end of the story, but it's relevant to bring up now to explain Julie's behavior. And also, I was already talking about the religious side of it, so... Julie's lack of self-worth feeds into his feeling of being undeserving of love. Because he was abused, love isn't in the cards for him. Because he pretends to be someone better than he perceives himself to be, he is not deserving of affection. And because he's undeserving of love, people don't truly love him. It's this negative thought circle that Julie finds himself in that kind of paints a lot of the struggle of the Heart of Thomas. Julie also closes his own heart off. An attempt to protect himself, an attempt to isolate. He gives his heart to no one. He does not love. He denies himself that connection, not because he truly doesn't want it, but because he's scared. He's scared of getting hurt. He's scared of hurting those that he cares about. He's scared to care. And this is the point where when I sat down to reread The Heart of Thomas to make this video, I did tell my best friend, I'm going on a self-discovery journey, and when I get on the other side, I'm going to learn if I'm actually aromantic or if it was just trauma. Because with Julie, it's just trauma. At one point, Eric finds out his mother died, and he runs away from school, going home to try and regain what he has lost, to feel the love of his mother one last time. His mother was the most important person in his life, so her death hits pretty hard. Julie eventually finds him with the intent to bring him back to school, but the two end up taking a little detour to Julie's family home, where we see that while he has family that cares for him, his grandmother is in fact his biggest hater. I would argue that the lack of love from his grandmother is a factor into why Julie feels so unlovable. Sure, his sister adores him, and it seems like his mom loves him as well, but his sister is just a child who doesn't know better, and his mother doesn't really stand up for him against his grandmother. I can see how Julie may spin the affection he does get into proof that he's unworthy of affection. For many people, it seems like the love they experience within their family is not only their first exposure to love, being loved, feeling loved, but also kind of paints how you interpret love and how you feel about yourself. And when you have family members, especially family members that live with you, like Julie's grandmother, who demean you, neglect you, emotionally abuse you, talk bad about you, make it very clear they do not love you, that's going to impact a person and how they feel about themselves and how they feel about love. And we don't know if Julie struggled with feeling unlovable before his trauma and before the events of The Heart of Thomas, but it is likely. And if he didn't, I feel like once he did start to feel that way, the way his grandmother treats him would, I don't know, maybe reinforce that kind of negative thought about himself. It just feels like it could be related. This trip to Julie's home serves to soften him as a character towards Eric and the readers. He adores his sister, he's kind and gentle, and behind all the harshness and threats to kill, he does care about Eric on some level. Julie is still largely a mystery to Eric at this point, but his cold shoulder starts to become warm. A shoulder to cry on. Julie is able to be there for Eric in ways that he wasn't for Thomas. But through their time together, Julie sees Eric as his own person. He is not Thomas. Eric is completely different besides how they look. He's the hot-headed, bothersome Eric, and Thomas was nothing like that. As the story goes on, Eric begins to fall for Julie. He sees his complexities and starts to piece together that something's a bit off. Eric may not know what's going on behind Julie's eyes, but he does notice when things happen, like running into his abuser at the train station. He may not know exactly that's what happened, but he knows that this was upsetting to Julie for some reason. He sees that Julie's upset just by seeing the man. And Eric begins to try to unravel Julie, to learn more about this mystery he's become attached to. Eric's love for Julie is built on gentle care, in a way. It's the ways that Julie shows up for him. It feels weird to say that knowing how tumultuous their friendship and relationship has been for most of this story, but while Eric is pulled into the mystery of Julie, I do believe it's the points where Julie is kind to him that make Eric fall in love. Before, Eric was enticed by the mystery, but enraged by the coldness. Once Julie began to thaw a bit, Eric started to catch tender feelings. Once again, Julie finds himself as the object of affection. Another boy loved him. Gently, clumsily, Eric, not knowing the pain of Julie's past, tries to gain Julie's attention. He's able to piece some things together, but ends up accidentally affirming negative things Julie thinks about himself. The two fight. Eric accuses him of being the reason Thomas died, accuses him of loving Thomas. He asks to know who tore off Julie's wings, and he threatens to tell people about the scars if Julie doesn't kiss him. Eric is very childish and manipulative. I don't think he has the intention to manipulate Julie, but that is what he ends up doing in instances like when they have their first kiss. It's not something that Julie wanted to do, but it's something that Eric forced his hand in because Eric knew Julie would not want him to tell people about his scars. Eric knew how to hurt Julie and chooses to hurt Julie to get what he wants. And it's in a way where it's not like, wow, Eric is a terrible person, but in a way where it feels like a child struggling to get what they want without fully realizing the way they're hurting people. Not until it's too late. Eric's love is like fire that almost burns down the bridge between him and Julie. He's reckless in how he pushes Julie for answers. He's manipulative in how he asks for affection. He's hurtful in how he interacts with the boy that he loves. As much love and care as there is between the two, there's an equal level of animosity that never really went away, not until the end of the story, essentially. But at the end of the day, Julie does open up to Eric. He feels as if he could never be forgiven. He knew that Thomas actually loved him, even if he felt Thomas wouldn't if he knew Julie down to his core. And that's what makes his relationship with Eric poetic, because Eric does know Julie to his core. Eric knows the ugly. Eric knows the ways that Julie has been tainted and ruined, and he sees the worst in Julie, and he still finds it in his heart to care about him. Kind of throwing all that in Julie's face and going, hey, you dumb fucking idiot, you are actually worthy of love despite everything. Julie rejected Thomas because he felt he was unworthy of Thomas's affection. He had no wings. His wings that would carry him to heaven were torn off. But Eric will give him his wings so that he could go and join Thomas. Eric knows everything that's wrong with Julie and decides that he's worthy of feeling love. He's worthy of going to heaven. He's worthy of his wings. After their heart-to-heart, it's clear to both Eric and Julie that Julie is still in love with Thomas. It took seeing Eric's love for him for Julie to understand Thomas's self-sacrifice. Thomas gave Julie his wings. In all his imperfections and the messiness of his relationship with Eric, Eric still found it in his heart to love Julie enough to give up something for him. If he could do that, then Thomas's love was real. Thomas gave up his life for Julie, not because of Julie. Thomas gave Julie his life so that Julie could finally start to live. Julie takes his new understanding of love and sacrifice and decides to go to a seminary. He takes Eric's wings. Well, I think he grows his own back or unfurls the wings he never actually lost and begins to fly towards his future. Julie shares with Eric why he is the way he is. He tells him about the ways that he was abused and how that has affected him. He rejected Thomas because he felt unworthy, because he was scared. He even dreamed about burning Thomas, hurting him the way he was hurt, loving him in the same twisted way that his upperclassmen loved him. Julie didn't want to repeat what had happened to him. He didn't want to love Thomas in that way. And I use the love in that context a little loosely. But Julie is on the path of healing now. He's accepted his feelings towards Thomas. He stopped running from Thomas's love and found that despite it all, people do in fact love him. Eric cares for him, even after all they've been through. Oscar cares for him, despite knowing the ways in which he was tainted. People see the real Julie and find it in their hearts to love him anyway. And Julie finally learns to accept that he is loved and capable of loving. In the heart of Thomas, love is a spiritual experience. It's pure adoration and care. It's getting to know someone and having a raw connection with them. It's not tied to sexuality, it's just the power of caring about someone and wanting to see them live their best life. The desire to take care of someone, to help them. Love is an abstract feeling of warmth and affection. And with that in mind, Julie dedicates himself to his spirituality. He goes to a seminary to study theology where he will prepare for a future in some sort of spiritual leadership. Julie has learned that love will find you regardless of who you are or what you've done. God loves him after all of it. Thomas loved him despite of it all. And it's through this study that he aims to grow closer to Thomas, to earn his wings so that he may join Thomas in heaven again and be able to share the depths of his feelings once and for all. Julie is a character that has always stood out to me, to the point that for years I misremembered him as like the main point of view character for the entire series, forgetting that most of this is actually in Eric's point of view. Julie's story is one of healing and finding your self-worth after everything has been ripped away from you. Julie finds himself again after being torn down, and those stories will always resonate. The Heart of Thomas is a tragic, melodramatic story about finding the courage to love and finding the courage to be loved. It's a healing journey. It's learning to be gentle. It's learning to overcome hardship. It's also an exploration of grief. Eric's story is also tangled with grief and learning to love. He'd previously only ever loved his mother, and his time at school taught him to love other people in different varying capacities. But also at school, Eric felt like he was being put in a box, since everyone saw Thomas when they looked at him. His own character now defined by other people's grief for this boy he had never met. Eric is the catalyst in Julie's story, and Julie becomes the first person other than his mother that Eric grows to truly love. I would also say he probably loves Oscar. Oscar's a really good friend to Eric throughout this whole thing, and I love my friends, so I'm projecting that onto them. Julie and Eric do help each other learn what love means to them, and I think that's beautiful. This is definitely one of those stories that hit me way harder the second time around. I won't get into it here since that's kind of embarrassing, but it means a lot to me. If you're interested in like the history of the Heart of Thomas and like the behind the scenes information about its development and its impact, I discuss it a lot in both my History of BL and Year 24 group videos, but I also just really wanted to yap about Julie's journey in the narrative, so here we are. I cannot state enough just how much I love The Heart of Thomas, how much it has touched me emotionally, how much it's given me to think about in context of my own relationships and myself, and I guess my relationship with relationships. I feel like over the past few months, you guys really got to learn just how much I love to yap about 70s shoujo manga. And this one is definitely the manga that made me love older shoujo. It was my first exposure to an older work. And when I say older, I think I do just mean 70s, because when I was getting into anime and manga in like the early 2010s, I think a lot of the stuff that people talked about were like 90s and early 2000s, which in the year 2026, that's all old shit. So, I'll probably find myself yapping about older shoujo series again in the future, so if you enjoy that, definitely stick around. If you also like video games and just anime in general, I do talk about anime in general, and I am probably going to start making Dragon Age videos again, because I've been thinking a lot about Meryl and Morrigan, and I want to do little unpacking videos about my characters again. Not my characters, my favorite characters, not me forgetting a whole word. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Whatever that may be. Probably an Unpacking Meryl video. Maybe. If y'all are also Dragon Age girlies. Anyway. Bye!